The second tone does not hurry. It enters the world the way mountains rise, slowly, deliberately, with the kind of presence that refuses to apologize for existing. Taurus is not chosen for drama or spectacle. It is chosen when the Oversoul seeks to rediscover the sacred intelligence of form, the steady rhythm of embodiment, the truth that matter is not a prison but a resonant field capable of holding divinity without distortion. Where Aries learns motion, Taurus learns continuity. And continuity is a deeper courage than most lifetimes can bear. The Oversoul selects this tone when the human experience must feel the world rather than outrun it. When the curriculum demands roots strong enough to withstand the winds of reincarnational memory, ancestral expectation, and emotional weather that never learned to soften on its own. Taurus belongs to fixed earth, and earth is not simply soil. It is the covenant between spirit and density, the promise that what is felt can become real, and what is real can be felt. Fixed means sustained, anchored, consistent, capable of holding vibration until it becomes embodiment. If Aries is the spark, Taurus is the hearth that teaches the fire to warm rather than scorch. Venus rules this sign not as an icon of romance, but as the architect of value, the deep knowing that beauty is not decoration but alignment, and that harmony is not weakness but a technology for stabilizing life. Through Venus, Taurus learns that pleasure is information, that comfort is feedback, that slowness is not avoidance but attunement to the subtle layers of existence that cannot be heard in haste. The Taurus tone is the Oversoul's answer to lifetimes spent drifting. Souls who incarnated under too much air, too much fire, too much movement without meaning, eventually require the medicine of presence. Taurus provides that medicine by inviting consciousness to inhabit the body fully, not to escape into visions or ambitions or spiritual abstractions, but to feel the pulse behind the ribs and remember that God also breathes through bones. The Oversoul chooses this tone when the body itself must become a teacher, when the senses must become instruments of truth, when the lesson is not transcendence but inhabitation. From the first breath, the Taurus-coded human feels the density of form more vividly than most. Textures speak. Silence has weight. Food is memory. Time has a shape that can be touched from the inside. The material world is not a stage, it is a companion. This sensitivity is not slowness, it is depth. The Taurus tone absorbs experience through steady repetition, allowing truth to soak into the tissues rather than bounce across the surface of awareness. In doing so, it teaches that wisdom is not a flash but an accumulation, a sediment of insight layered gently until it becomes unshakable. Every sign carries a shadow made from its own brilliance. For Taurus, attachment is the echo of devotion without discernment. The desire for stability can become a cage. Comfort can replace growth. Familiarity can masquerade as safety long after it has become stagnation. The Oversoul does not fear these risks. It chooses them intentionally because the soul must learn the difference between peace and inertia, between loyalty and self-abandonment, between grounding and entrapment. Taurus learns these truths through repeated encounters with situations that appear permanent until they are suddenly not. Jobs shift, relationships dissolve, foundations tremble. What is not truly aligned eventually crumbles, not to punish the Taurus tone, but to remind it that security built on fear is counterfeit. The Oversoul sends these tremors as clarifying agents, so the soul can learn that real stability arises from inner coherence. In the astrological wheel, Taurus follows Aries because creation requires not just initiation, but endurance. The first impulse must be held long enough to mature. It rules the second house, the realm of value, resources, and embodiment because it teaches the soul to transform raw possibility into lived reality. What you build with your hands, what you tend with your breath, what you choose to keep and what you choose to release, all become mirrors through which the Oversoul refines its understanding of worth. Venus in Taurus teaches desire without distortion. Desire becomes a compass pointing toward what nourishes and away from what drains. Pleasure becomes a spiritual indicator, revealing where life is aligned. The senses become gateways to presence. Touch becomes prayer. Sound becomes ceremony. Stillness becomes revelation. The Taurus tone learns that divinity does not only appear in visions but also in the grain of wood, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of ripe fruit, the quiet hum of a room where nothing is wrong. The Oversoul selects this tone when the lifetime must rediscover that holiness is not elsewhere. It is here. The Taurus body holds memory in layers. Muscles remember promises kept and broken. The throat, ruled by this sign, becomes the site of unspoken truth or unwavering integrity. When Taurus is silenced, the body grows heavy. When Taurus speaks from authenticity, the entire system lightens as if a vibration has been released. This is why the Oversoul often pairs the Taurus tone with environments or relationships that pressure the individual to use their voice. Silence becomes too costly. Expression becomes liberation. The throat becomes the instrument through which embodiment and truth converge. Emotionally, Taurus moves in slow tides, not storms. Feelings gather gradually, become known gradually, release gradually. This slowness is not emotional immaturity, it is precision. Taurus learns itself by living inside each emotion long enough to understand its texture. Impulsive emotional decisions rarely serve this tone because Taurus wisdom arises from consistency, not sparks. The Oversoul designs these cycles deliberately so the soul can distinguish between temporary discomfort and true misalignment. When Taurus walks away, it is rarely on a whim. It is because the truth has ripened fully. Relationships under this tone demand simplicity and sincerity. Taurus is not seduced by chaos. It seeks the kind of connection that feels like warm hands, steady breath, grounded presence. It does not require constant novelty. It requires reliability. The Oversoul chooses this tone when the soul must learn the art of sustainable love, love that is built rather than performed, love that grows like roots rather than fire. In return, Taurus offers devotion that becomes a sanctuary for others. But that devotion must be earned, not assumed. Once betrayed, Taurus does not break loudly. It breaks completely, and the Oversoul uses this breaking to teach discernment about where energy is invested. The shadow of resistance emerges when change threatens comfort. Taurus may cling to a dying chapter because it once felt safe. The Oversoul counters this by sending inevitable shifts, moves, endings, awakenings that cannot be negotiated. These are not punishments but invitations into updated alignment. The soul learns that comfort without growth is a slow erosion of purpose. True grounding is flexible, true embodiment evolves. Spiritually, the Taurus tone is the practice of remembering that matter is not an obstacle, but an extension of consciousness. The body becomes a sacred site. Rituals become sensory. Meditation becomes a return to breath's weight. The Oversoul uses Taurus to refine incarnation itself, teaching the soul to inhabit life with the same reverence it once reserved for the non-physical realms. When mastered, Taurus becomes the calm in the center of storms, the pulse that steadies others, the presence that restores coherence to chaotic environments simply by existing without rush. The mature Taurus tone moves like a river shaped by centuries, not hurried, not stagnant, but inevitable. Decisions are made through resonance, not pressure. Boundaries are gentle but immovable. Work is thorough. Love is enduring. Stillness becomes a form of intelligence. The Oversoul treasures this stability because it forms the foundation upon which higher spiritual insight can land without scattering. When this sign concentrates in key parts of the chart, the lifetime becomes a study in form. Artists who shape beauty with their hands, healers who soothe through presence alone, builders who transform raw materials into shelter, individuals who anchor communities by simply refusing to leave when things become difficult. In the presence of a Taurus tone, others remember what it feels like to breathe fully. You were not chosen for speed. You were chosen for depth. You were not designed to chase. You were designed to hold. And in your holding, the Oversoul remembers what it means for spirit to feel safe inside a body again. The Taurus tone ripens by practicing the art of enough. It begins with the body, because the body is where truth is hardest to counterfeit. When you eat when hungry and stop when satisfied, when you rest when tired and rise when replenished, when you let breath weigh more than the clock, a silent calibration takes place. The Oversoul uses these ordinary acts to refine extraordinary capacities. The nervous system learns trust, and in that trust opens. Creativity becomes steady rather than sporadic. Intuition becomes grounded rather than guesswork. You stop confusing adrenaline for purpose. The Taurus curriculum asks you to treat life as a garden, amend the soil, choose what to plant, water in rhythm with the season, weed without drama, harvest with gratitude, and compost what is finished so it can feed what is next. To forget any step is to starve your own abundance. To remember them is to find that prosperity was never separate from care. Value is the central instrument of this tone, and value is not simply price. Value is congruence between what you claim matters and how you allocate time, attention, and resource. The Oversoul will therefore place you in situations where choice is visible in the most concrete terms. Which work you let shape your days, which relationships you allow to touch your inner weather, which objects you keep on your desk, which voices you allow in your head. Each selection becomes a syllable in the sentence your life speaks. Taurus asks that this sentence be honest and beautiful. If dishonesty creeps in, if you stay where your body hardens, if you buy what insults your senses, if you listen to what corrodes your peace, the tone will dull and resentment will gather like rust. The remedy is not punishment, it is realignment. Name what matters and organize your environment so your body can recognize that you meant it. This sign's rulership of the throat is the map to sovereignty. The voice is where invisible value becomes audible boundary. When you say no, you are defending the soil. When you say yes, you are inviting seed. When you speak gratitude, you water what you want to grow. When you tell the truth about what hurts, you pull the weed before it colonizes the bed. Many Taurus-coded souls were trained early to keep the peace by swallowing truth. The Oversoul will not let that continue indefinitely. It will send crossroads where silence costs more than honesty. In those moments, words feel heavy, not because they are wrong, but because they carry minerals. Dense elements of self-respect that must pass through your system to strengthen your spine. Speak kindly and plainly. Speak once and mean it. Your voice is a tool, not a weapon. Use it to build rooms where trust can live. The dignities clarify the engineering. The moon is exalted in Taurus because feelings stabilize when the body feels safe. The lunar instinct to hold comfort and nourish finds soil it can rely on. And the nervous system unclenches enough to receive life. Mars is in detriment here, not as an insult to courage, but as an instruction to slow the blade until it becomes craftsmanship. Action must move at the speed of integrity. Venus, ruler of the sign, governs cohesion, the subtle agreements that allow parts to become a whole without losing their nature. These notes are not abstract. They explain why your best decisions are those that taste right in the mouth of your awareness, why your worst injuries occurred when you forced movement against the body's counsel, and why your power returns the moment you choose what is generous to your nervous system. Money lessons are often embedded in this tone because money is condensed decision. Taurus is not greedy by nature, it is precise. It wants resources that match its rhythm. The Oversoul uses budgets, prices, invoices, and savings not as tests of worth, but as mirrors of value. If you chronically undercharge, a deeper story is speaking. Perhaps a belief that ease must be earned through strain. Perhaps an inheritance that equates visibility with danger. If you overspend to soothe, the body is asking for other forms of comfort. Touch, quiet, beauty that does not demand repayment. When you treat money as a musical instrument rather than a moral verdict, you learn to tune it. Income becomes a melody of service. Expenses become choices that keep the studio warm and the tools clean. Wealth in this register is stored usefulness. Relationships refine the Taurus tone by teaching reciprocal stability. You attract those who seek refuge, and your instinct is to provide it. Generosity is holy here, but enabling is not. The difference is whether giving preserves your root system. If you give what empties you, you will eventually resent what you once loved. If you give from overflow, the giving multiplies itself. The Oversoul will send partners and friends who test this border until it becomes clear. Expect to practice slow trust, watching if words are followed by patterns, not just promises. Expect, too, to be asked for reliability, because your presence calms rooms. Say yes only when you can sustain the yes without leaking. Say no before bitterness grows thorns around your kindness. Change arrives to Taurus like rain after a long summer. Necessary, relieving, and at first a little startling on the skin. The fixed nature of the sign resists novelty until novelty proves it can be housed. The Oversoul uses gentle inevitabilities, seasonal shifts, life cycle transitions, slow-moving choices that turn into thresholds, to teach that evolution does not have to be violent. Learn to change furniture before you must change houses. Learn to tighten the boundary before the bond snaps. Learn to listen when your favorite sweater tells you it wants to retire. Ritualize upgrades so your system experiences change as continuity with a new name. Work under this tone thrives on process and tangible outcomes. You excel where patience is a tool. Craft, design, cultivation, finance, architecture of systems and spaces, healing arts that rely on touch and presence. Voice-centered vocations where tone carries as much truth as words. The measure of success is not speed, but integrity of result. You may be underestimated by those trained to worship frenzy. You will be sought out by those who have learned the difference between urgency and importance. The Oversoul often places the Taurus-coded person in roles that become invisible once they are done well. Roots are rarely applauded, yet nothing grows without them. Take pride in the quiet revolutions your steadiness allows. Spiritual maturation under Taurus is re-enchantment with the ordinary. The morning light on the table becomes a teacher. Washing dishes restores a rhythm the mind cannot manufacture. Preparing food with attention becomes alchemy. Breathing into your back while you work returns you to 3 dimensions when thought tries to flatten the world into plans. This is not sentimental. It is an advanced state in which the apparatus of perception has slowed enough to register divinity where it always was. Prayer expands from words to posture. Gratitude enlarges from feeling to structure. How your room is arranged. How your calendar respects your cycles. How your boundaries protect the Sabbath your cells require to reset. The Taurus shadow does not disappear, it is befriended. When resistance rises, you treat it as a messenger. What is this protecting? What memory warns me here? What would feel safer than this standstill? Often the answer is simpler than the mind assumes. Water, protein, sun on the eyelids, a phone turned face down, 5 minutes with a plant, a budget that stops the quiet hemorrhage of energy. When you soothe the body, stubbornness releases its jaw because it was holding the line for a nervous system that felt alone. In that softening, choice returns. Cycles help translate heaven into habit. Watch the rhythm of Venus. The small returns of beauty every day or two. The larger returns of a project as it ripens. The seasons of aesthetic appetite. Notice how the progressed moon's passage through Taurus renews your commitment to embodiment. Pay attention to eclipses across the Taurus-Scorpio axis when shared resources and personal resources rewire their contracts. None of this requires prediction. It asks for listening. Astrology becomes a language for noticing the choreography the Oversoul already set in motion. At full expression, the Taurus tone radiates quiet authority. Your presence says we have time to do this right. Your touch says form can heal. Your voice says this is what I can offer and this is what I cannot, and both are acts of love. You do not apologize for needing beauty. You recognize that environments are nutritional and that ugliness is a kind of malnourishment. You curate the field so that what matters can take root. You are not seduced by the noise of urgency. You listen for the thrum beneath it and you tune the room to that. Leadership from this sign looks like stewardship. You do not drag people. You build conditions where growth becomes the obvious next step. You standardize what should be standardized so energy can be saved for the genuinely novel. You allocate resources with the memory of winter and the promise of spring in your mind at once. You plan far enough to calm the mammal and remain flexible enough to respect the river. In conflict, you decline escalation. You ask the body what outcome would actually reduce harm and move toward that without ceremony. The Oversoul chose this tone because a life needed to be made real. Not imagined, not projected, not performed, made. A song that exists as a file becomes a voice in a room. An idea that lives as a sketch becomes woodcut and joined with care. A value that floats as a slogan becomes a schedule that demonstrates it. Taurus keeps its promises by turning verbs into nouns. To love into a home, to care into a banked reserve, to believe into a habit, to honor into a boundary that stands even when you are tired. If you ever doubt your path, go back to touch. Place your palms on a table and feel its patience. Put your feet on the ground and let gravity remind you of belonging. Hold the tools of your craft and notice how they carry the memory of every time you refuse to rush. Say your name out loud and hear how the vowels settle in your chest. Eat slowly. Pay what you owe. Keep what you keep clean. Release what no longer fits without blaming it for the years it served you. Decorate your life with objects that converse with your nervous system in a language of calm. You are not here to prove that speed wins. You are here to demonstrate that peace builds. In your wake, gardens sprout where there were only plans. Rooms become hospitable to the truth, and others remember that their bodies are not obstacles to God but instruments of grace. When the world tempts you to run, walk like a vow. When the world shouts, lower your voice until meaning returns. When the world forgets what enough feels like, lay the table, light the candle, and let the meal be the sermon.